The small research vessel drifted slowly through the outer edges of Alpha Centauri space. Its light panels glowed a soft blue against the darkness, marking it as clearly non-military. On its side, painted in large white letters, was the word Curiosity, and below it in smaller print, Earth Exploration Initiative. Inside the ship, Captain Greg Wells looked out at the stars with tired eyes. They had been traveling for 3 years now, the first human crew to venture this far using the new fusion drive. Most of the journey had been spent in cryosleep, but the last month had been active as they collected data about this neighboring star system. "Captain, I'm picking up an unusual signal," said Communications Officer Julia Reed. Her fingers moved quickly over the glowing panel. "It's structured, definitely not natural background radiation." Greg moved to her station and looked at the readout. "Can you clean it up?" "Working on it," Julia said. "It's like nothing in our database." Science Officer Ben Moore joined them, his normally calm face now animated with excitement. "If that's artificial, we might have just made first contact." The crew of 12 gathered around the main deck as Julia amplified the signal. A pattern emerged, mathematical sequences that couldn't occur naturally. Then, startlingly clear, an image formed on their main screen. A face, but not human. It had large almond-shaped eyes and a narrow jaw with skin that shimmered slightly, like the surface of water. "Hello, Earth vessel," the face said in perfect English, causing several crew members to gasp. "We have been observing your approach. Welcome to Centauri space." The next 48 hours passed in a blur. The alien vessel, much larger than Curiosity, escorted them to a space station orbiting the third planet in the system. The aliens called themselves the Centauri Coalition, though they explained they weren't native to this system, but had colonized it centuries ago. Dr. Elaine Porter waited nervously in the Grand Hall of the Galactic Science Academy. As the leading xenobiologist in the coalition, she had been chosen to lead the first official study of humans. When the door opened and the Earth delegation entered, she felt a flutter of scientific excitement. The humans were escorted by Academy guards, though escorted was perhaps too strong a word. The humans seemed completely at ease, looking around with open curiosity rather than the caution most species showed when first brought to an alien center of power. Elaine approached the lead human, who had been identified as Captain Gregory Wells. "Welcome to the Academy," she said, using the translation device that had been programmed based on the communications from the human ship. "I am Dr. Elaine Porter, head of xenobiology." The human made a strange gesture, extending its upper limb. After a moment of confusion, Elaine remembered the briefing. This was a handshake, a human greeting ritual. She carefully extended her own 6-fingered hand, and the human grasped it gently. "Pleasure to meet you, Doctor," said Greg with a smile that showed his teeth, a gesture that would signal aggression in many species, but apparently meant friendliness in humans. Over the next few days, Elaine conducted initial interviews with each crew member. The more data she collected, the more confused she became. The humans slept for nearly a third of each planetary rotation, an incredibly inefficient use of time. They required water so frequently that they carried containers of it with them. They consumed plants and animal products, sometimes mixed together in bizarre combinations, but it was their behavior that truly confounded her. During a tour of the engineering level, crew member Ryan Nelson stumbled and struck his arm against a metal railing. Blood appeared, red, iron-based, and several nearby Arcturan engineers backed away in alarm at the sight of bodily fluid. But Ryan looked at his injury and made a strange vocalization. Laughter, her data later confirmed. He was expressing amusement at his own physical damage. Later that same day, Elaine observed Science Officer Ben Moore listening to audio patterns from the Academy's music archive. When a particular sequence played, a mournful composition from the extinct Proxima culture, moisture appeared in his eyes. "Are you experiencing pain?" Elaine asked with concern. "No," Ben replied, wiping his eyes. "It's just beautiful. It reminds me of Earth's oceans at sunset." Elaine made careful notes. The human was secreting water from its visual organs in response to sound patterns that reminded it of unrelated natural phenomena. The response made no biological sense. After 2 weeks of observation, Elaine called an emergency meeting of the Academy Council. The 12 representatives of the major coalition species gathered in the circular chamber, their different physiologies requiring various seating arrangements. "Honored Council," Elaine began, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "I must report that humans defy our standard classification systems." She displayed her data on the central projection. "They laugh when injured, yet weep at abstract concepts like music or mathematics. They appear simultaneously fragile and indestructible. Their social structures are both hierarchical and egalitarian." The ancient Arcturan philosopher Zix Tellen leaned forward, his crystalline body catching the light. "In my 3 centuries of studying cognitive evolution, I've never encountered such paradoxical beings. Their decision-making process is equally baffling," added psychology director Vin Rowe. "When presented with clear choices, they often select based on what they call feelings rather than objective data." Security Chief Kroldar, a massive being with armored skin, rumbled with concern. "Are they dangerous?" Elaine hesitated. "They show no aggression without cause, but their unpredictability makes assessment difficult. When Navigator Lucy Green was shown our combat training facility, she offered suggestions to improve efficiency that our experts had never considered." The council chamber filled with concerned murmurs. "We need more data," Elaine concluded. "I propose we establish a dedicated research initiative, Project Human Understanding." Zix Tellen's crystalline form glowed in agreement. "We must understand these beings. If humans are to join the galactic community, we need to know what we're dealing with." As the council voted unanimously to approve the project, on the other side of the station, the human crew was causing more confusion. In the recreation area, engineer Steve Davis had taught several young Centauri how to play rock, paper, scissors, a game based entirely on arbitrary symbols that had the alien youth chittering with delight. And in the medical bay, Dr. Nicole Adams was comparing notes with coalition physicians, calmly explaining how humans routinely cut into each other's bodies. Surgery, she called it, to remove or repair damaged parts. "You remain conscious during your training for this?" asked the horrified medical director. "Of course," Nicole replied with a smile. "How else would we learn?" Elaine Porter's initial report to the Academy database that night contained a single, concluding line: "Humans operate on principles that seem to contradict established universal constants of biology, psychology, and social development. Further study is urgently needed to determine if our scientific understanding is incomplete, or if humans truly represent an evolutionary anomaly in the galaxy." 3 months after first contact, the Central Medical Research Facility buzzed with unusual activity. Dr. Frank Martinez had volunteered to be the first human to undergo complete physiological testing. He lay on the examination platform, calm and relaxed while alien medical devices hovered around him. Medical Director Kelnara watched from behind a transparent barrier. Her blue tentacles waved slowly, a sign of deep concentration among her species. Her assistant, a tall, spindly being, named Vexto, recorded every measurement. "His heart rate is steady," Vexto noted, "even though he knows we will cause him discomfort." Kelnara nodded. "Most species show stress responses before testing begins. Humans appear to have control over their automatic functions." Inside the chamber, Frank breathed deeply as the tests began. First came the basic scans, mapping his internal structure. Then the more invasive tests, tissue samples, nerve response measurements, and finally, pain threshold testing. When the pain tests began, the medical team was surprised. Frank winced but remained still as the nerve stimulator activated. "Increase by 20%, Kelnara ordered. After several increases, Frank finally raised his hand to signal a stop. The level registered was far beyond what most species could tolerate while remaining conscious. "How did you endure that?" Kelnara asked through the translator when the tests concluded. Frank sat up, rolling his shoulders. "I just focused on my breathing. Pain is mostly in the mind anyway." This statement caused such confusion that Kelnara requested him to repeat it 3 times. The concept that pain could be in the mind, rather than a direct physical response, violated basic neurological principles across all known species. The results from Frank's tests spread quickly through the research facility. Within days, 5 more human crew members volunteered for specialized testing. In the climate simulation chamber, navigator Lucy Green demonstrated human temperature adaptation. While most species could survive in a narrow range of conditions, Lucy functioned reasonably well from nearly freezing to uncomfortably hot temperatures. Humans evolved on a planet with extreme seasonal variations, she explained to the bewildered researchers. Where I grew up, it could be below freezing in winter and over 100 degrees in summer. The researchers had to check their translators, certain there was an error. No single species should be able to adapt to such temperature ranges without hibernation or special biological modifications. In another wing of the facility, engineer Steve Davis amazed the toxicology department. The team had been cautiously testing human reactions to various substances when Steve casually mentioned that many humans regularly consumed a plant-based neurotoxin called caffeine. "You intentionally ingest a toxin?" asked chief toxicologist Zirban. "Every morning," Steve confirmed. "It helps us wake up. Many of us can't function properly without it." The idea of developing dependency on a toxic substance as a cultural practice sent the research team into a frenzy of new theories about human neural structure. But the most surprising tests involved endurance. When crew member Alan Collins participated in comparative physical trials, the researchers expected to establish baseline capabilities. Instead, they witnessed something unprecedented. The test was simple: run on a treadmill until exhaustion. Most species had very predictable limits based on body mass, oxygen processing, and muscle type. Alan ran past the predicted human maximum, then kept going. His face turned red, sweat poured from his body. His breathing became labored. All biological. Indicators suggested he should stop, but he continued. "Your body is sending clear signals to cease activity," reported the confused monitoring technician. "Not done yet," Alan gasped between breaths. He ran for another 12 minutes before finally stopping. The medical team rushed forward with monitoring equipment, expecting to find severe physical distress. While his vital signs were elevated, he recovered with surprising speed. "It's just stubbornness," Alan explained afterward, drinking water as confused aliens monitored his vitals. "Humans call it pushing through the wall. Our bodies tell us to stop, but we decide not to." The concept of willfully overriding biological limitations shocked the galactic community. Some species could enter survival trances or temporary physical enhancement states, but none could simply decide to ignore their body's limitations through what humans called determination. That evening, Medical Director Kelnara called an emergency meeting of the research team. "Their cellular regeneration capabilities are off the charts," she reported, her tentacles waving in agitation. "They heal from injuries that would be fatal to most species, yet succumb to microscopic pathogens. Their pain tolerance fluctuates wildly based on psychological factors that we cannot quantify." The research team displayed their findings on the main screen. Human bones, though seemingly fragile, could repair after complete breaks. Their skin, while easily damaged, regrew without intervention. Their digestive system could process substances that would poison other life forms. "They are walking contradictions," concluded senior researcher Trilvex. "Their biology should not function as effectively as it does." The most disturbing data came from brain scans. Unlike most species with specialized neural pathways, human brains showed remarkable plasticity. When injured, they could reroute functions to undamaged areas. "It's as if they evolved to survive trauma," Kelnara said. "What kind of evolutionary history creates such adaptations?" As the meeting concluded, the Xeraxian physical evolution specialist Dr. Thunvar stood up. His rigid exoskeleton clicked as he moved to the center of the room. "I have studied evolutionary biology for 30 standard years," he announced. "The principles I have established are recognized across 17 star systems. But these humans—" He paused, his compound eyes shifting colors in distress. Nothing about them follows any established principle of evolutionary logic. The room fell silent. I am resigning my position at the Academy, Dr. Thunvar continued. If humans exist as they are, my entire field of study is invalidated. I cannot continue to teach theories that a single species so thoroughly disproves. He walked stiffly from the room, leaving the other researchers in uncomfortable silence. Later, that week, Captain Greg Wells met with Dr. Elaine Porter to discuss the findings. Your researchers seem troubled by our test results, Greg noted as they walked through the botanical gardens of the research station. Elaine's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, her species equivalent of a sigh. You must understand, Captain. We have cataloged over 200 sentient species across the galaxy. All follow certain biological constants. Humans violate nearly all of them. Greg laughed. We're adaptable, that's all. It's more than that, Elaine replied. Your Dr. Nicole explained that humans have deliberately exposed themselves to poisons in small doses to build immunity. Your crew casually mentioned how you remove parts of your body that malfunction and continue living. You alter your own biochemistry with substances. You stay conscious during physical trauma. She stopped walking and turned all 4 eyes toward him. The question is no longer what humans are, but how you came to exist at all. Greg shrugged. Earth isn't an easy place. We adapted. No, Elaine said quietly. Adaptation is gradual, logical. Your species appears to have developed in defiance of logical progression. It's as if you were designed to survive anything. As she spoke in the medical wing, Nicole Adams was teaching alien physicians how to set a broken bone, calmly describing the process of physical therapy that would follow. In the engineering section, Ben Moore was showing Centauri technicians how humans used painful electrical shocks as diagnostic tools, and in the station's garden, Julia Reed was eating a bright, red fruit that contained compounds toxic to every other known species, smiling at the sweet taste. 6 months after first contact, the Galactic Hub welcomed the second human delegation. The sleek transport ship Discovery docked smoothly at the central port, carrying 20 new humans to join the research initiative. Among them was Dr. Samantha Wright, a cultural anthropologist specifically chosen to help the aliens understand human society. From the moment she stepped off the ship, Samantha became the subject of intense observation. Chief Psychologist Renzi, a tall being with silvery skin and large dark eyes, had been waiting eagerly for a human expert in social behavior. I am honored to meet you, Dr. Wright, Renzi said, touching her own forehead in the formal greeting of her people. Your insights will be invaluable to our research. Samantha smiled warmly. The honor is mine. I've spent my career studying different human cultures, but never imagined I'd be explaining all of humanity to another species. Renzi led Samantha to the psychology wing, where a team of researchers from 6 different species waited. Each had been studying human behavior through observation, but all had reached different conclusions. We find ourselves confused, Renzi admitted as they walked. Your species displays emotional patterns that contradict our understanding of neurological function. Over the next few weeks, Samantha participated in numerous tests and interviews. She watched scenes from Earth media and explained the emotional contexts. She described human rituals, celebrations, and social structures. But rather than clearing up confusion, her explanations often created more. During one session, Renzi played a clip from a human comedy film that the First Contact crew had brought. The scene showed someone slipping on a wet floor. This depicts potential physical injury, Renzi noted. Yet humans find it amusing. Our observers report that Captain Wells and his crew laughed at this scene. Samantha nodded. It's slapstick humor. The exaggerated fall with no serious injury creates a release of tension through laughter. But other scenes of minor injury caused concern among the humans, countered Renzi. When Navigator Green cut her finger in the laboratory, Engineer A. Davis showed distress. Context matters, Samantha explained. Fiction versus reality, intention, relationship to the person. All these factors affect our emotional response. Renzi made notes on her data pad. Humans experience competing emotions simultaneously, she wrote. They can feel profound grief, yet find humor in the same moment. They form deep attachments to inanimate objects. They create art specifically to evoke sadness, which they then voluntarily consume for pleasure. The most challenging concept for the alien researchers was how humans processed grief. When asked about death rituals, Samantha described funerals, wakes, and memorial services. "You gather to intensify sorrow?" asked assistant psychologist Vex Lore, his feathered crest rising in confusion. "Not exactly," Samantha said. "We come together to share our grief, which actually makes it easier to bear." The alien researchers exchanged glances. The concept of emotional sharing reducing individual burden contradicted the mathematical principles of emotional distribution accepted by every known species. Then, 3 weeks into the research, tragedy struck. Engineer Peter Donahue was inspecting the outer hull of the human living quarters when his tether failed. By the time the emergency team reached him, he had died from exposure to space. The aliens watched in fascination as the humans processed their loss. The crew gathered in their common area, sharing stories about Peter. Some cried openly. Others laughed while telling funny memories. They ate foods that Peter had enjoyed. They played music he had liked. They embraced each other frequently. They deliberately intensify pain through remembrance, reported sociological analyst Vex Khan. Yet this shared suffering appears to diminish individual grief. Renzi spent hours observing the humans' grieving process, making careful notes. "The mathematical principles of emotional distribution simply don't apply," she concluded. Somehow, when humans share emotions, the burden decreases rather than being distributed equally. A week after Peter's death, the humans held a memorial service and invited their alien colleagues to attend. Many came out of scientific curiosity, but found themselves unexpectedly moved by the ritual. Captain Gregg spoke about Peter's dedication and humor. Dr. Nicole shared a story about how he had fixed her grandmother's antique watch before leaving Earth. Several crew members played a song that Peter had often hummed while working. There were tears and laughter, sometimes from the same person in the same moment. As the service concluded, the humans placed personal items into a small container that would be sent on the next ship back to Earth to be given to Peter's family. "We carry him in our hearts now," Greg said simply. "But his family should have something to hold." Afterward, several alien researchers approached Samantha with questions. "Your species uses physical objects to process emotion," noted Renzi. "Yet you just stated that you carry your friend in your hearts, which is clearly metaphorical since your cardiac organ cannot store memories or personality." Samantha smiled sadly. "Human emotions don't always make logical sense even to us. We're full of contradictions." That evening, the leading emotional theorist from Betelgeuse VII, Dr. Mintaru, attempted to create a model of human emotional processing. She had 3 advanced degrees and had mapped the emotional patterns of 12 different species. After 6 hours of work, she stood up from her desk, deleted all her files, and wrote a simple note. "It doesn't add up. Nothing about them adds up." The next day, she resigned her position at the academy. Meanwhile, the human crew slowly returned to their normal routines, though they often paused to share memories of Peter. They established a small memorial in their common area, a simple photograph and his favorite coffee mug. The alien researchers were particularly fascinated by this behavior. "They create physical reminders of pain," Vexcon noted, "yet claim these reminders bring comfort." One evening, Renzi found Samantha sitting alone, looking at stars through the observation dome. "May I join you?" the alien psychologist asked. Samantha nodded, wiping tears from her eyes. "Just having a moment." Renzi sat beside her, silent for a while before asking, "Were you especially close to Engineer Donahue?" "Not particularly," Samantha admitted, "but he was from my hometown. We had that connection." "Yet you display significant grief." Samantha looked at the alien with a small smile. "Humans can feel deeply for people we barely know. It's empathy." "We have terms for shared emotional states," Renzi said, "but nothing that describes feeling emotions on behalf of others with no direct benefit to oneself." That's humanity for you, Samantha replied. We're emotional beings, sometimes even when it makes no sense. That night, Renzi added to her research, notes, human emotions appear designed for group survival rather than individual benefit. They willingly absorb pain for others, share joy that amplifies rather than divides, and maintain connections to the deceased that serve no practical purpose. Their emotional system should be inefficient and self-destructive, yet somehow makes them more resilient as individuals and stronger as a group. She paused, then added, perhaps we have been measuring the wrong outcomes all along. 9 months after first contact, the Interspecies Mathematical Congress held its annual gathering at the Central Science Hub. For the first time in its 400-year history, the Congress welcomed a new species to its ranks. Dr. Kyle Jenkins, a mathematician from Earth, had been invited to present human approaches to problem-solving. Kyle stood nervously before the assembled delegates. Unlike human conferences where speakers wore casual clothes, here he faced 200 beings of various shapes and sizes, all wearing formal symbols of academic achievement. Some floated in suspension tanks, others perched on specialized seating. A few existed as projected energy fields. Thank you for the invitation, Kyle began, his voice steady despite his nerves. I'm honored to represent Earth mathematics. The head of the Congress, philosopher-mathematician Zornthal, nodded his large dome-shaped head. We are curious about human cognitive processes. Please proceed. Kyle started with basic human mathematical history, from ancient counting systems to modern computer algorithms. The audience listened politely, occasionally making notes. But when Kyle reached human approaches to unsolved problems, the atmosphere in the room changed. When facing an unsolvable equation, humans often use what we call intuitive leaps, Kyle explained. We step away from pure logic and look for patterns that might not be immediately obvious. A murmur ran through the audience. One delegate, a crystalline being with multiple limbs, raised an appendage. Clarification requested, the being said. Are you suggesting humans abandon systematic analysis in favor of random guessing? Kyle smiled. Not random, no, but we sometimes make connections that aren't strictly logical. Isaac Newton developed calculus while sitting under an apple tree. Friedrich Kekulé discovered the structure of benzene after dreaming of a snake eating its own tail. The murmur grew louder. Zornthal leaned forward. You claim major mathematical breakthroughs came from dreams and fruit? Not directly from them, Kyle tried to explain. But human minds make unexpected connections. We call it intuition or creative thinking. For the next 2 hours, Kyle tried to explain human mathematical intuition to increasingly confused aliens. The concept that breakthroughs could come from anything other than rigorous step-by-step logic was deeply troubling to them. At the end of his presentation, Kyle offered to demonstrate with a simple test. He displayed a complex pattern recognition problem and asked for volunteers to solve it. 3 alien mathematicians stepped forward, each highly decorated in their fields. They approached the problem with perfect logical analysis, working through each possible solution systematically. All 3 reached the same conclusion after several minutes of calculation. Then Kyle solved it in seconds using a pattern recognition shortcut that humans called eyeballing it. The room fell silent. How did you eliminate the other potential solutions so quickly? Asked one delegate. Kyle hesitated. I didn't really consider them. This pattern looked familiar, so I jumped to the most likely answer. Without testing, alternatives? Without calculating probabilities? The alien mathematician's voice conveyed deep confusion. Sometimes humans just have a gut feeling about the right answer, Kyle explained. The term gut feeling required 20 minutes of clarification, as the concept of using digestive organs for cognitive processes disturbed many delegates. By the time Kyle finished his presentation, the Congress was in disarray. Zornthal called an emergency session immediately after Kyle left. Humans operate with cognitive dissonance as a default state, he explained to his colleagues. They can hold contradictory beliefs simultaneously without experiencing the neural discomfort that would incapacitate any other sentient species. Meanwhile, in another part of the station, human diplomat Lisa Harper participated in strategic simulations with the Galactic Diplomatic Corps. The simulations tested decision-making in complex scenarios with multiple variables. In one simulation, Lisa faced a trade negotiation with 5 competing interests. The Corps' analysis suggested a specific approach with the highest probability of success. Lisa reviewed the data but chose a different strategy. "Why did you select that option?" asked her supervisor, Ambassador Grell. "Our calculation showed only a 23% chance of success compared to 67% for the recommended approach." Lisa shrugged. "I just had a gut feeling the other parties would respond better to a more personal approach." When her strategy succeeded, the diplomatic team was baffled. They ran the simulation again with different variables. Again, Lisa ignored the statistical recommendations and succeeded using what she called people skills and reading the room. Ambassador Grell wrote in his report, "Human Harper succeeds using methods that directly contradict established principles of strategic analysis. When questioned, she cannot articulate a logical basis for her choices." The incident reached the attention of the Academy Council, who added it to their growing file of human anomalies. Similar reports came from every department working with humans. In the engineering section, human technicians solved problems by tinkering rather than following established protocols. In the medical wing, Dr. Nicole suggested treatments based on clinical experience rather than pure data analysis. In the cultural exchange program, humans accurately predicted the reactions of alien species they had just met without any prior reference data. 2 weeks after Kyle's presentation, the Academy gathered its top researchers for a special session on human cognition. Dr. Echo Rem of the Theoretical Cognition Institute presented the findings. "Humans think wrong," he began bluntly. "By every established standard of neurological processing, their cognition is faulty, inefficient, and contradictory." He displayed brain scans showing how humans used multiple, sometimes competing neural pathways simultaneously. They process emotional and logical information together, contaminating both. They make decisions before completing analysis. They believe things without evidence and disbelieve things despite evidence. The assembled scientists shifted uncomfortably. "Most disturbing," Dr. Echo Rem continued, "is their creativity. Unlike other species who create through logical recombination of existing elements, humans routinely conceptualize things with no precedent in their experience." He played video of Kyle explaining the concept of fiction to confused alien linguists. The idea that humans deliberately created elaborate falsehoods for entertainment was difficult enough. But the revelation that these imaginary scenarios then influenced real human behavior and technology was shocking. "They imagine what doesn't exist, then make it real," whispered Dr. Echo Rem. Their spacecraft designs were inspired by stories written centuries before space travel was possible. Their medical tools were conceptualized in entertainment programs. If a thought can violate natural law, how can we trust anything we observe about them? After the presentation, the Council voted to create a new research category specifically for human cognition. They named it paradoxical thinking and allocated significant resources to its study. That evening, human engineer Steve Davis sat with Kyle Jenkins in the station's recreation area. "I heard your math presentation caused quite a stir," Steve said, sipping his coffee, a beverage that still mystified alien researchers. Kyle laughed. "They think we're defective because we use intuition. One of them actually asked if my brain was damaged when I was young. The engineering team had me run diagnostics on myself yesterday," Steve replied. "They couldn't believe I fixed the coolant system by listening to the wrong sound it was making." Both men shook their heads, amused by the aliens' confusion. That moment, across the station, Dr. Elaine Porter reviewed the latest findings with growing concern. The humans violated every principle of logical sentient development. Their strange cognitive patterns should have been evolutionary disadvantages. Yet somehow these defects had carried them to the stars. "Perhaps," she wrote in her private notes, "what we perceive as errors in human thinking are actually adaptations to a chaotic universe. They don't follow the rules because they evolved in a system where rules constantly changed. She paused, then added, "The most troubling question isn't what humans are, but what their existence implies about the universe itself." 5 years passed since the first human ship drifted into Centauri space. What began as a simple first contact grew into the largest research initiative in galactic history. Over 300 scientists from 27 different species studied humans in every possible way. They measured, tested, observed, and analyzed. They collected more data on humans than any other species had gathered about another. And yet, humans remained a mystery. The Galactic Academy of Sciences decided to host an unprecedented conference, Human Understanding a Comprehensive Failure. Representatives from every major scientific institution in known space gathered in the Grand Assembly Hall. The massive room accommodated beings of all sizes and environmental needs, from the tiny gas-breathing Miri to the enormous aquatic dolphins in their floating tanks. Dr. Elaine Porter, now the foremost expert on human studies, prepared to deliver the keynote address. After 5 years working closely with humans, she had learned to mimic some of their expressions. She practiced smiling in the mirror before leaving her quarters, wanting to show respect for human customs during her presentation. The hall fell, silent as Elaine took the central platform. Her 4 eyes scanned the audience, noting the many distinguished researchers who had devoted years to understanding humans. "Honored colleagues," she began, her translator converting her clicks and whistles into standard galactic language. "After 5 years of intensive study, we must acknowledge that humans represent a fundamental challenge to our understanding of sentient life. They are walking contradictions, living paradoxes." The room remained silent. No species enjoyed admitting failure, but the evidence was overwhelming. Elaine continued, displaying the first data set on the giant screens surrounding the hall. Humans derived pleasure from voluntary physical pain. The screen showed humans exercising, eating spicy foods, and engaging in activities they called sports that often resulted in minor injuries. They created problems to solve as entertainment. The display changed to show humans doing puzzles, playing strategy games, and deliberately taking apart functional devices to reassemble them. They formed emotional bonds with mechanical devices and fictional entities. Images appeared of humans naming their vehicles, talking to their computers, and weeping over characters who never existed. With each new example, the assembled scientists grew more uncomfortable. Everything about humans violated the established principles of evolutionary development. But perhaps most significantly, Elaine continued, humans are the only known species whose capabilities increase under pressure rather than degrade. The more impossible a scenario, the more likely humans are to transcend their limitations. She showed footage from year 3 of the research program, when an accident had damaged the environmental systems in the human living quarters. With toxic gas filling their section and communication systems down, the human engineers had improvised breathing devices from available materials, repaired the damaged systems without proper tools, and carried injured colleagues to safety. During the emergency, individual humans had performed tasks that should have been physically impossible according to their own baseline measurements. They had survived conditions that, according to all medical data, should have been fatal. When we asked how they managed this, Elaine said, Captain Wells simply said, "People can do amazing things when they have to." Academy Grand Master Zix Tellen floated forward, his crystalline body catching the light. "Dr. Porter, after all these years of study, do you have any conclusive theories to offer?" Elaine smiled in a remarkably human way before responding. "After all this research, I can only conclude that humans evolved not despite chaos, but because of it. Their planet's extreme environmental variations and catastrophic events didn't hinder their development. They were the crucible that forged human adaptability." She displayed her final slide, showing a simple question: what even is a human? Below it, her conclusion: a being optimized for a universe that doesn't play fair, a creature that transforms disadvantage into innovation, a paradox that works precisely because it shouldn't. The conference continued for 3 days. Different researchers presented their findings, each adding to the picture of humans as fundamentally unexplainable through conventional science. Dr. Kel Nara, from biology, explained how human cells could regenerate in ways that defied standard cellular mechanics. Dr. Ren Si, from psychology, described how human emotional responses should be self-destructive, but instead created stronger social bonds. Dr. Eko Rem, from cognitive science, demonstrated how human logical failures repeatedly led to breakthrough innovations. On the final day, a human delegation was invited to attend. Captain Greg Wells, now serving his 5th year as human ambassador, led his team into the hall. The assembled aliens fell silent, studying the creatures that had baffled them for so long. Greg looked around the room with a smile. "I understand. You've been trying to figure us out," he said. "Any luck?" Zix Tellen moved forward. "Ambassador Wells, we have reached only one consensus. Humans may never be fully understood through conventional analysis. The brightest minds in the galaxy have failed to explain you." Greg laughed, a sound that still startled some of the more sensitive species. "We often don't understand ourselves, so don't feel bad." After the conference, Elaine walked with Greg through the botanical gardens. 5 years had changed them both. Elaine had adopted human gestures and expressions. Greg had learned to speak basic phrases in Elaine's native language. "Your speech was interesting," Greg said. "You think our chaotic evolution made us different from other species?" Elaine's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture of contemplation. Every other known sentient species evolved in relatively stable environments. Changes came slowly, allowing for logical adaptations, but Earth's a mess, Greg finished for her. Ice ages, meteor strikes, rapid climate shifts, predators everywhere. Precisely. You didn't evolve to follow rules. You evolved to survive when rules changed without warning. They stopped by a pool of glowing water, home to aquatic plants from a dozen worlds. "There's another theory," Elaine said quietly. "Some of my colleagues believe humans represent a flaw in our scientific understanding. If you exist as you are, then our fundamental theories of evolution, psychology, and biology require complete revision." Greg considered this. "So either humans are weird or science is wrong." "In simple terms, yes." Greg laughed again. "I vote for humans being weird. We're pretty strange even to ourselves." As they continued walking, in another part of the station, life went on. Dr. Kyle Jenkins was teaching alien mathematicians about human intuition through games of chess. Samantha Wright was organizing a cultural exchange festival with foods and music from a dozen worlds. Engineer Steve Davis was adapting alien technology to work more efficiently using what he called common sense. And on a recently arrived Earth ship, new human diplomats prepared to join the galactic community, bringing with them art, music, stories, and ideas that would continue to baffle and fascinate their alien colleagues. In her private quarters that night, Dr. Elaine Porter made her final entry in the Project Human Understanding database. "After 5 years, we have gathered enough data to fill the Academy's entire central memory core. We have measured every aspect of human biology, psychology, sociology, and cognition. We have observed them in every conceivable situation. And yet humans remain fundamentally unpredictable. When all variables suggest one outcome, humans often produce another. Where our models predict failure, they find success. Where logic dictates impossibility, they create possibility. Perhaps, in the end, that is the definition we seek. What is a human? A creature that thrives on proving the universe wrong. Somewhere, in the station, a human child born during year 3 of the program asked her alien caretaker why the stars shined. The alien began explaining stellar nuclear fusion, but the child interrupted with her own theory involving cosmic fireflies and nightlights for sleeping planets. The alien started to correct her, then stopped, remembering the conference conclusion. What, even is a human? A being that looked at the universe not just as it was, but as it could be. And somehow that felt exactly like the answer humans would have expected all along.